Alright, Honey Badger Actual coming to you again with another video about being a light interdictor and different kinds of fittings you can use. I'm going to try and make this one quick, so I'm going to be a little bit faster with the way I talk. First things first, this fitting I'm not actually skilled into the weapon system fully yet, so I don't get very good DPS, and this isn't a tier 10 dictor, it's a tier 2 dictor. But I'd like to come over here real quick. This is one of my stores. We're going to build an interdictor real fast. I like to use the Thrasher 3 for this setup because the Thrasher 3 has better warping, like going into warp and warp speed properties than some of the other interdictors. It's usually why other people use Thrasher 1s and Thrasher 2s. So, I don't even remember if I have all the right rigs here. Well, I've got 2 of them, but that's alright. The reason I'm using hyperspatial velocity 3s is the whole point of being an interdictor is to get somewhere very quickly. If you're using the Thrasher setup, is to get there very quickly, and the best way to do that is to be the fastest at warping. There are not very many ships that can get into a 5.8 astronomical unit warp in 2.3 seconds, but we're going to improve that even more. So, as a fast dictor, your 2 biggest priorities are doing your job and getting there quickly. So we're going to go with doing our job first. And because this is a fast guy, you expect to die, we're going to go with an MK5 sphere launcher because you're going to usually be putting up bubbles near the gate, which means unlike using something like a cormorant with the larger bubble, you're usually going to be setting up a catch bubble on the inside of the line, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you already know what that means. Next, we're going to go with, because we don't want to actually have to fight, we're not going for a fighting ship here, we're going for a fast ship. We're going to go with, screw it, we'll go with the Webifiers just because. And yes, I'm cheap, so I use cheap gear when it comes to this stuff. Something you may want to be able to do. Actually, you know what? We're going to go like this. We're going to go with 1 web, a missile guidance disruptor, and a tracking disruptor. That way, if you get tackled by an interceptor like Slasher, Dramiel, Daredevil, Condor, you can put some E-War on them. Next, for survivability, we want a cloak. And we want a small micro warp drive. You can oversize prop on most of these ships, but oversized prop doesn't work as well on a destroyer as it does a cruiser for some reason. Next, we're going to go with our second most important part of the mission is getting there quickly. We're going to add the inertial stabilizers. Next is our guns, of course. Guns aren't really all that important on an interdictor, unless, of course, you are going for combat, which this is not. This one is primarily going to focus on using that interdiction sphere and using it smart. What do we got? Do we have a nanocore for this? I think I do. I'm pretty sure I got a blue one somewhere. Oh, where are you? There we are. Void. Gotta love the colors. We add some flight velocity with this one. It allows you to get to and from the gates, and if you get scrambled or neuted, even if your micro warp drive doesn't work, you're still faster than stock, which is always a benefit. It does raise your IP costs, but that's okay. We're not too worried about that. Again, we're going for cheap, and because we don't really care too much about increasing the cost, we're not going for high end. We're not going to use any of the tier 3 rigs in the combat rigs. Now, wrong button. We'll go to navigation and look. Our cold time for a warp preparation is 1.77 seconds. Now that's with some skills into warp preparation and destroyer hull, which gives you better inertia. But that's not what's important, because even a no-skill pilot, that's no pilot character skills pilot, can fit like this. And if you do it right, you go in between gates and you activate this as you go to warp from gate to gate. You can cut down your warp time to almost a tick. If you're really pressed, like you know it's a long warp system and you need to get going fast, you pop both of them at the same time. Now you do that because it allows you to get into a warp faster. A lot of people want to fit polycarbon to their secondary rigs here. I forget the word for it, honestly. Engineering rigs. They want to fit all polycarbons to get that navigation, that time as little as possible. And the only problem I have with that is you're losing out on the benefit of using those slots for hyperspatials, because there's no modules that you can fit to this ship to make you go faster in warp. And there's two parts to getting somewhere faster in Eve Echoes and Eve Online as well. That's how quickly you can align for a warp, and then how fast you are in the warp. So you can actually greatly boost the number that measures how quickly you can cross systems. A mixture between your warp prep time and your warp speed, which will determine your loading in a gate, getting into a warp, and then landing at the next gate. Because it doesn't really matter how fast you are getting into a warp in an interdictor. If you're still slower than the people you're trying to slow down, they're going to outrun you. So you want to be as fast in warp and as fast into warp as possible, which is why we're not fitting for really combat. These modules here, the guidance disruptor, tracking disruptor, and the web, they're mostly escape items, as well as the cloak. You don't see any combat fit modules. I'm going to talk about another tier 10 fit I have for my cormorant. This one, if I remember how I have it fit, if not, I'll adjust it to better fit what I'm going to explain here. This one is more, because of the size boost from the nano core and from everything else on the bubble, this one's actually purpose built for, currently it's for tackling gunships. And the reason I do it like this is because when you're doing it this way, you can be your own E-War. You don't need another ship to do E-War. And because you're a destroyer and you're small, most of the time if you're hunting, you're either hunting ships your size, and having E-War on them is immensely powerful when you're using snub-nose rails for as much DPS as you can get out. And it mitigates how much damage they can do to you. If you actually look at them, they're pretty useful. I mean, -14 probably stacks with a mitigating, a bit of a loss on return for using more than one module at the same time. Diminishing returns, that's the phrase. But if you look, navigation. Wow, is that slow, right? Like, it's 4 seconds into warp. 4 seconds. The other one was 1 second. Well, 1.5 cold. 1.5 seconds versus 4 seconds. That's the difference between you getting tackled by an interceptor and you insta-warping off the gate as soon as you load in. And that's kind of my point for having the low slots set up with inertial stabilizers. If you look at my rigs, I don't even have a complete rig set, because this actually was a throw together for a gate camp that we were doing earlier. I don't want to destroy that to put the EM3 in there, but I should put the EM3 in there. Now, you'll notice another thing. My fast-moving ship has higher DPS than my actual combat ship, and that's actually because of skills. I spent a lot of time in my small cannons, and I'm still working on small railgun. So, far better DPS and DPS application because I was only using thrashers, but I want to get into something else. Depending on which job you're trying to do with a light interdictor, I mean, you're going to want to do all these skills. Destroyer command for the inertial modifier and flight velocity. You're going to want to do those skills, but you're also going to want to go to propulsion jamming. You're going to want to do your propulsion jamming because of the interdiction sphere launcher effective range and flight time, extending how long your sphere stays in the air and how big it is. The better those skills are, the better your big Dictor energy will be. Engineering's not so important if you're using an interdictor. It's far more important if you're using a combat ship. Like if you plan on fighting instead of running quickly and using your special ability, as it were, to help your fleet out and to hinder the enemy fleet, well, fighting in an interdictor is going to require those engineering skills. Doing your job in an interdictor is going to require you to just be good at doing that, which I cover in most of my other videos. Your maintenance technologies, to be honest, in an interdictor, not important. You don't need any of those. You really don't. You don't plan on getting into a fight, and they don't passively increase your ship's defenses in any way, shape, or form. However, these ones do, and you should get these, because if you do get caught, they will help you not die. So, I hope that helps with what skills you should have as an interdictor pilot and what kind of fittings you should have. I mean, of course, there's other fittings where you go with all webs to slow them down for gate camps and go defensive on your lows. But to be honest, those are purpose-built for a gate camp fleet and not for an interdictor to a light interdictor, because that's perfect for a heavy interdictor. A light interdictor's job is in its name. It's light. It's fast. It's supposed to be able to go from here to there quickly and drop bubbles. Interdiction spheres. This has been another Honey Badger Actual video. I'm going to put this on the training playlist. If you have any videos of you dying in an interdictor, getting kills in an interdictor, or would like to help with training videos, if you're a member of Void, please message me on the Void Discord. You can either message me privately or ping me in members chat. I don't really care. Either way is fine with me. I'm looking for people to help do videos for training so that I can actually better illustrate what I mean, as well as I'm getting into some video editing, which will help me kind of make higher quality videos. So I might remake a few of the training videos. You don't have to rewatch them if you already know what's going to be in them. But I appreciate your time, and the Void consumes.